Hello and welcome from the great city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm here for a wedding, actually. Lori's aunt and uncle are having a wedding for their daughter, and we decided to come out and I don't know, celebrate with them. I know weddings during the coronavirus. It kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yep.
So
Just a little bit.
we're here celebrating with them, and we want to take some time out and talk to you guys really quick on the evening of Memorial Day. This day has an enormous amount of meaning to me. I had grandfathers that fought in wars, and they knew people that died. And this is, I think we have the great 3-day weekends, and well, I guess every day is a 3-day weekend now. But we think about these holidays, and I think it is very important to remember the men that died for these freedoms, and knowing that freedom isn't free, it takes a great amount of sacrifice. And kind of to that thought, my uncle-in-law, he preaches at a church, and we listened to a message just this morning, and he started off with the Gettysburg Address, and it just so moved me, and I think it's very appropriate for the eve of Memorial Day to read it. And I've asked my wife Lori to read it for us and to kind of kickstart this message, so if you don't mind.
407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Great read, babe. Thank you. And again, I find that speech very fitting for this day. Our great president, Abraham Lincoln, gave that speech at the Battle of Gettysburg, where many lost their lives for the pursuit of freedom. And I think that this is a day that we remember that freedom comes with sacrifice. Freedom is never free, and somebody had to sacrifice for that freedom. And that kind of leads into what I want to talk about today, in that there's a freedom that we have in America, but there is a spiritual freedom that Jesus not only offered but gave to us. In the book of John, we're going to start at chapter 8, and I think we're going to start at verse 37 if you want to meet me there. But when Jesus was talking to the Jewish people, and specifically I think the religious leaders of that time, and they were just talking about how he offers a freedom that that will be kind of like unparalleled, one that they don't quite understand, because they were saying, well, we've never been in chains, which is very interesting because the Jews were actually like second-class people to the Romans at the time. So whether they didn't know true oppression like the Jewish people were in Egypt,
and the Egyptians, and the Babylonians,
yes,
and the Medes and Persians, but yet they said
that we're not
we've
in chains.
never been in chains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Jesus is talking to them about the freedom that he is giving. And let me find it really quick. So he was talking about how we can be slaves of sin. Those of us, we are all born in sin, and we all do sin. And he is saying to us in John chapter 8 that, very truly I tell you, Everyone who sins is a slave to sin. See, sin has a way of not only kind of like getting into our heart, but holding us down. How many of us have gotten into situations where we know what is right and we know that we could have done better, and yet we fall into the same temptations, we fall into the same bad attitudes, we fall into the same things over and over again? I mean, I can't tell you how many times someone will break up in a toxic relationship, and then a couple weeks be like, "Oh, I miss him," or "I miss her," and go right back to the toxicness. I think there's a proverb that talks about how a dog will return to its vomit. And there are so many times that like I see people that want to get out from the thumb of their sin, from their mistakes, from the toxic people, and they just end up returning to it. It's because there's these invisible, almost spiritual chains that are holding us to some of these things. And it's because we don't have that freedom that Jesus is offering us, because we don't have that faith to like know that everything's going to be all right, and we just lock ourselves into that sin, that thing that's been holding you back, that sin that you say, "I know I'm better than this," but keep on going back to it. Those same mistakes, those things, "I know I can do better, I know I shouldn't have done that," but yet you did it anyway. You are a slave to sin in that situation. And it says right there in the Bible that we all are slaves to sin. I'm not, I'm not exempt for that. Lori is not exempt for that. We've had our vices, we've had our struggles, and we've had things that we've had to overcome, and only through the freedom that Jesus gave us. Not anything that we did, not anything that we could muscle through and willpower through, but because we gave our lives to Jesus, and because we started to believe that He has something better for us, could we remove those chains. It's so funny. I want to also talk about how the death that set us free from that was Jesus's. You see, like I said, freedom comes at a sacrifice and with a great cost, and it cost Jesus his life. When he was hanging up on the cross, he said, "It is finished," and when he said that all chains were broken, and we were all set free in that very moment. And I think that there are just some people whose chains have fallen off, but still just remain in their cell. The chains that were holding them back have been loosened. Jesus broke the chains and said, "It is finished." And when he said it is finished, it is. But so many people are in that cell of their mind, and they just continuously don't want to leave the comfort of maybe that sin or that toxic relationship or whatever. The chains are broken, but are you still just sitting in your cell, stewing in your sin, your mess-ups, your mistakes? Are you letting them run your life, or are you letting your past determine your future? I don't know, just an interesting thought. And I want to skip down to John chapter 8, verse 36. It says that when the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. The Son set us free, and I think that is the freedom that we need to experience every single day, not just when we're in trouble, not just when we're thinking about it, but we need to exercise the freedom that Jesus gave us as well. We need to know that He is our Savior, and we need to know that there is a better life outside, instead of just being stuck under the thumb or in the chains of our sin and our screw-ups and our mess-ups and our past. Your past does not dictate your future. If you have Jesus leading your life, He will lead you to a better, more prosperous, and happier life than you ever could. Let's experience the same freedom that maybe us as Americans, we embrace that freedom. We love that freedom. We'll scream it at the top of our lungs. But yet in our minds, we are stuck in a jail cell. And we hold ourselves back because we haven't experienced the freedom that Jesus gave us. I don't know. That's just an interesting thought. And
the thought that I had while we were sitting here, while you were talking, is how much we take that freedom for granted. been in Corona now for 2 months, and we've had just a little taste of losing some of our freedoms.
Yeah.
Of not being able to go where we want, wherever we want. And like we came to Pennsylvania, and to go into stores and stuff, you actually have to wear a mask.
Yep.
You know, we have a little bit more freedom in Ohio. But, you know, we take it for granted until we lose some of it.
Yeah.
And I think we do that spiritually too. We take that freedom that Jesus has given us when we accept Him as our Savior. We gain that freedom from sin, and then we take it for granted. And we forget the sacrifice and the price that was made for it, and the person who made that sacrifice. And we kind of just push Him to the side and let everything else take focus and priority over Him.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and I think that that's what Corona has done, has, you know, made us appreciate the freedom. And, like, you know, I was so excited when we got to go out to eat the other day at B-Dubs and sit at a table and be served. And, like, and you appreciate it so much more. And I think we need to do the same thing spiritually. And I think that's what Jesus has been reminding us through Corona is remember the freedom that I gave you and how blessed you've been physically and spiritually of, you know, being an American, having these freedoms. I gave you that freedom. Like, I gave you that freedom just like the soldiers who died for your country's freedom gave you that freedom. And, you know, so I think just take time this week to appreciate that sacrifice that Jesus made for us. And enjoy all the background noise, because this is city life, folks. Like, you cannot escape from it.
Yeah, I'm going to have fun editing this. All right. So, with all this in mind, I want to let you know that, you know, no matter what goes on with Corona, if the church doors is closed forever, we still have Jesus' freedom. If, you know, things get out of hand with all this stuff, we still have freedom, and you are still free. If you are a follower of Christ, you will not be put back into your chains. You can't even put yourself back into those chains, because Jesus is right there reminding us, hey, there's a better life. Walk out from this cell and experience the freedom that only I can give you. So I just want you guys to kind of go into Memorial Day with that thought, and, you know, have fun, you know, eat your hot dog, spend time with your family, but, you know, just understand that freedom has a cost, and Memorial Day reminds us of that. And I think that we also need to be reminded of the sacrifice Jesus gave us to have the freedom in Him. Do you have anything to add?
No, except for with freedom, I've heard, and I was just reminded as I was looking over here at this cool church steeple. We might have to do like a turn around like camera and show them this, because it's kind of cool. But with freedom isn't the ability to do whatever you want, even though in some ways it is. But freedom is also, the most important part of freedom is the ability to choose what's right.
Yeah.
Like, and so when Jesus says, I've made you free and I've given you freedom, He's not saying you have free reign to do whatever you want and sin as much as you want, because I give you that freedom, and now you have your one-way ticket to heaven and you're safe, and so just sin all you want here until you get to heaven. God gives us the freedom to choose what's right. And so I just want to challenge you guys this week and the weeks coming to choose what's right, to figure out your priorities. You know, when we do get to meet together as a youth group again, make that a priority in your life. And I have an announcement. I don't know if you've been following or your families have been following, but our church is going to be open again for the public starting the first Sunday in June, June 7th. And so, you know, you have the freedom to make that choice to be there, and we hope that you will. For right now, we're still not going to have youth group, and kind of just watch for announcements with that. We'll keep doing online for a little while, but you are free to come to the church service on Sunday, and we hope you will, and that you'll worship with us again, and just be encouraged by Pastor John and being with our church family again. Just watch for more details on that, because we are going to have, it looks like we're going to have sign-ups for that, because we can only have so many people there. We can't just open the doors and let everybody flock in. So if you are going to come, you'll have to sign up for that. But just kind of watch RCF Family on Facebook, and or the app for announcements on that and sign-ups. But yeah, we're gaining freedoms little by little, and I hope you guys take advantage of that and do what you can to, grow the kingdom and to make Jesus a priority in your life.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. So with that, I'll also add that this Wednesday, if all things go according to plan, we will be doing a collaboration with Benjaboom for the Benjaboom for the midweek catch-up. And I'm going to put a quick teaser image right here. So if you want to know what all those bottles are about, you'll have to tune in to this midweek catch-up. Should be airing, if all things go according to plan anyway, Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And I think we're going to have something really fun for you guys that day. So
it's been a couple weeks in the making.
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.